The summons arrived while I was elbow deep in a reactor conduit, arguing with a maintenance drone that insisted the problem was user error. I was halfway through telling it that humans invented reactors before its species figured out indoor plumbing when the royal crest flashed across my wrist console. Royal crest. As in the Matriarch's personal seal. The drone powered down mid-argument, as if it knew I'd just been promoted from foreign contractor to potentially very important political problem. The message was brief. You have been selected. No explanation. No context. Just coordinates within the palace complex and a time that was exactly 20 minutes away. I showed up covered in reactor grease, boots still magnetized, expecting to fix something expensive. The palace interior didn't look like it needed repairs. It looked like it needed its own gravity field. The ceilings arched so high they faded into bioluminescent haze, and the floor beneath my boots shimmered like liquid crystal. Alien courtiers lined the corridor, tall and elegant, their luminous eyes following me with unsettling focus. Whispers traveled faster than sound. That is the human. The model. The Matriarch's choice. Model? That was new. 2 guards the size of armored transports opened towering doors without speaking. Inside waited a chamber circular and intimate despite its scale. At the center stood the alien Matriarch. Photographs didn't do her justice. Recordings flattened her presence. In person, she radiated controlled gravity. Tall, poised, draped in layered fabrics that shimmered between silver and deep violet, she looked less like a ruler and more like a decision the universe had already made. Her gaze settled on me with clinical curiosity, and something warmer beneath it. You arrived promptly, she said. Her voice was low, textured, precise. It didn't echo. The room seemed to bend around it. Your message didn't leave much room for delay, I replied, wiping grease off my hands onto a cloth that probably cost more than my shuttle. A ripple passed through the observing sculptors positioned around the chamber. Yes. Sculptors. Now I noticed the tools, floating crystal arrays, scanning lenses, resonance prisms suspended in careful orbit. I have commissioned an intimate sculpture, the Matriarch continued. And you are to serve as the model. There are sentences in life that split time into before and after. That was one of them. Intimate, I repeated carefully. In our culture, she said, stepping closer, intimacy represents strength revealed without armor. It honors vulnerability chosen, not forced. That did not make it less concerning. And I was selected because your species carries resilience differently than ours. You display confidence without ritual display. It is compelling. Compelling. Several of the sculptors made soft clicking sounds of agreement. I cleared my throat. So this is symbolic. Artistic. Cultural exchange. Yes, she said smoothly. And anatomically precise. Ah. There it was. A tall sculptor approached with a hovering prism that hummed softly as it scanned me from boots to forehead. It paused around my shoulders, then my hands. Strong structural symmetry, the sculptor murmured. It's called going to the gym, I muttered. They all turned to me at once. The gym? One asked reverently. Never mind. The Matriarch's lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile. More like an acknowledgement that she found my confusion entertaining. You will hold specific poses, she explained. Each reflects a principle: endurance, devotion, controlled dominance, and chosen loyalty. Controlled dominance, I repeated. Her eyes held mine. You are capable of it. The temperature in the room felt like it shifted 3 degrees. They positioned me on a raised platform surrounded by slow-orbiting crystals. The first pose was simple, upright, relaxed, shoulders back, chin level. Apparently my casual stance triggered a flurry of excited murmurs. Note the unforced posture. The balance of readiness and restraint. The subtle forward inclination suggests protection instinct. I was literally just standing there. The Matriarch circled slowly, evaluating. Her gaze was not shy. It was analytical, deliberate, tracing lines of muscle and tension like a scholar studying rare architecture. Do humans always maintain eye contact during evaluation? She asked. Only when we're not intimidated. A pause. And are you intimidated? No. That earned me my first true smile. Small. Dangerous. The next pose required a slight turn of the torso, one arm relaxed at my side, the other resting across my midsection. I complied, trying very hard not to think about the word intimate echoing through my skull. The resonance crystals brightened. Emotional spike detected, a sculptor announced. What spike? I asked. Mutual focus, the sculptor clarified. The matriarch stepped closer than before, now within arm's reach. I could see faint patterns of light moving beneath her skin like slow constellations. Her presence wasn't just visual, it pressed against awareness, warm and steady. In our art, she said quietly, truth amplifies form. So if I think awkward thoughts, the statue knows. A soft ripple of alien amusement filled the chamber. Yes, she said. It does. Fantastic. The next scan required what they called a gesture of chosen vulnerability. Apparently that meant unclenching my hands and relaxing my jaw. You hold tension, she observed. I'm being measured by floating alien lasers in a royal palace. That is fair. She moved behind me to adjust my shoulders herself. Her touch was light, precise, and entirely unnecessary for someone of my size. Still, I did not move. The crystals flared brighter. Resonance bond increasing. Another sculptor whispered. Bond? I glanced sideways at her. She did not step back. Is that normal? I asked. For some commissions, she replied evenly. And for others? They remain decorative. The implication lingered between us. The final scan required me to face her directly. No platform. No distance. Just eye to eye beneath the drifting lattice of crystal light. Hold, a sculptor instructed. We did. Time stretched. Her gaze did not waver. Mine didn't either. Something shifted in the air, not dramatic, not explosive. Subtle. Like two frequencies aligning. The crystals pulsed in unison. Resonance confirmed. The lead sculptor breathed. The sculpture will not merely depict form. It will carry connection. The chamber fell silent. The matriarch's voice lowered, meant only for me. Your species carries fire beneath restraint. And yours? I asked quietly. Her fingers brushed mine for the briefest second. Intentional. Testing. We shall see what it carries, she said. The crystals dimmed. The session was complete. But as I stepped down from the platform under the watchful gaze of half the royal court, I understood something unsettling. This sculpture wasn't just about art. And I wasn't just a model. The unveiling ceremony was scheduled at dusk, when the twin stars dipped low enough to paint the palace spires in molten gold. Apparently that lighting was symbolically optimal for emotional resonance. I suspected it was also optimal for dramatic effect. They dressed me for the occasion in formal Terran attire modified with subtle alien threading that shimmered faintly when I moved. I looked like myself, just upgraded. Which, according to 3 separate attendants, was precisely the point. The plaza was already filled when I stepped onto the elevated platform beside the matriarch. Thousands of her people stood in concentric circles around the veiled monument. The structure towered at least 3 stories high, draped in luminous fabric that rippled in the evening air. Every eye shifted to me. I had fought pirates in asteroid fields. I had negotiated trade disputes with warlike insect diplomats. None of that compared to standing next to a monumental representation of myself while an entire alien civilization evaluated my posture. You appear composed, the matriarch murmured. Inside, I'm screaming. Her lips twitched. Maintain the exterior. A ceremonial tone reverberated through the plaza. The drapery began to dissolve, not fall, dissolving into glittering particles that drifted upward like reverse rain. The sculpture emerged. I stopped breathing. It was me, yes, but refined through alien artistry. The posture captured that relaxed stance I hadn't even realized was distinctively human. Shoulders broad but not aggressive. Chin lifted just enough to suggest confidence. One hand open at my side, not clenched, not reaching. Controlled strength. The material was living crystal, shot through with faint currents of light that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. My expression, if it was mine, held a half-smile that bordered on challenge. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "It radiates," someone whispered. "It stabilizes the field. Observe the balance." I leaned slightly toward the matriarch. "That's taller than I am." "It is aspirational," she replied smoothly. As if summoned by her presence, the crystal lines within the statue brightened when she stepped forward. A low harmonic hum resonated. Outward, subtle but undeniable. The crowd reacted instantly. "The alignment! The resonance favors her! It responds!" I glanced between her and the sculpture. "It's not supposed to do that, is it? It is functioning precisely as designed," she said. "That's not reassuring." She turned toward the assembly, her voice amplified effortlessly. "Behold the Terran exemplar. Strength without ritual aggression. Vulnerability without submission. Fire restrained by choice." The way she said choice made my spine straighten instinctively. The sculpture's glow intensified for half a second. I hadn't moved. I had only felt something. Whispers multiplied. A cluster of nobles closer to the front studied me with renewed fascination. One tall aristocrat leaned toward another and said, loud enough for me to hear, "Their species does not display dominance through ornamentation. It is embedded in posture." "Is that what this is?" I muttered. The matriarch didn't look at me. "Yes." The formal address concluded, but the spectacle did not. The plaza transformed into a reception space, dignitaries approaching in controlled waves to observe both statue and model side by side. It was surreal. Some compared measurements discreetly. Others simply watched how I stood, how I met their gaze. I made a deliberate choice not to fidget. Apparently that was the correct move. "Notice the stillness," one envoy murmured. "Predatory calm," another replied. I almost laughed. If they knew how close I was to bolting, they'd rewrite their entire academic framework. Then the unexpected happened. As the matriarch returned to stand beside me for a final ceremonial gesture, the sculpture's internal light surged, not violently, but warmly. The harmonic hum deepened into something almost melodic. The nearest nobles froze. "Resonance spike," a court scholar breathed. The matriarch's fingers brushed my hand again, deliberately this time. Not an accident. Not adjustment. The statue responded. The glows synchronized. Every whisper in the plaza sharpened into speculation. I leaned closer, speaking under the cover of applause. "You didn't tell me it would react to you." Her gaze remained forward, regal and composed. "It reacts to connection. And this connection is—" She finally looked at me, just briefly. "Evident. There are moments when a crowd feels like background noise. That was one of them." The world narrowed to the space between her hand and mine. Then the political implications arrived. A herald approached at speed, kneeling before her. "Matriarch, transmissions have begun. Multiple sovereign houses request audience." She did not look surprised. "For what purpose?" she asked. The herald swallowed. "Commissions." A murmur spread through the nearby dignitaries as the herald continued. "The Thalary High Council requests a human emotion sculpture to study Terran effective projection." Another scroll lit up. "The Virex Dominion petitions for a human warrior monument to analyze your species' combat poise." A third message shimmered into existence. "The Cerelian Enclave requests a human lover monument, described as ceremonial." I coughed. "Ceremonial. Sure." The matriarch's expression remained unreadable, but her eyes held a glint of unmistakable satisfaction. "You have become desirable diplomacy," she said quietly. "That wasn't in my job description. History rarely asks permission." As the announcements continued, I realized something profound and slightly terrifying. They weren't asking for sculptures of a human. They were asking for sculptures of me. The court scholars began debating in real time, analyzing the psychological and socio-political impact of Terran representation. Some praised her foresight. Others warned of imbalance. One rival noble spoke sharply. To elevate a foreign physiology as archetype risks destabilizing tradition. The matriarch turned, her presence instantly silencing him. Tradition that cannot withstand admiration deserves to evolve, she replied. The plaza went very still. She had just defended humanity publicly. Defended me. The rival noble bowed stiffly but said nothing further. I felt the weight of that gesture more than the crowd's scrutiny. She was not merely showcasing art. She was staking political ground. The reception wound down slowly, but the implications did not. By the time the plaza cleared, I understood that the unveiling had accomplished far more than cultural exchange. It had shifted gravity. As attendants escorted us back toward the inner chambers, I finally asked the question forming since the glow first intensified. You knew this would happen, didn't you? She walked beside me in measured silence for several steps. I anticipated possibility, she said. That's not the same as surprise. No, she agreed. It is not. We reached a private corridor where the palace lights dimmed to a softer hue. No court. No scholars. Just the faint echo of our footsteps. She stopped walking. I did not predict, she admitted quietly, that the resonance would be so strong. Is that good? Her gaze held mine unshielded now. It is powerful. And dangerous? Only if mishandled. The air between us felt charged again, but not performative this time. Personal. You realize, I said slowly, I didn't sign up to become a galactic template. Her lips curved faintly. No one ever does. Another message pinged through the corridor's display field. More requests. More leaders wanting variations of what stood in that plaza. Emotion. Warrior. Lover. I exhaled slowly. This is bigger than a statue. Yes, she said. Her fingers brushed mine once more, not for the crowd, not for ceremony. Just contact. You are no longer simply a model, she added softly. And what am I? Her eyes glimmered with something that looked dangerously close to amusement. An influence. That word lingered as the palace doors closed behind us, sealing away the echo of applause but not the consequences of what we had begun. By the next cycle, I stopped being introduced as the human engineer. I was the exemplar. I found that out when a delegation from the Thalary High Council arrived and bowed, not to the matriarch first, but slightly in my direction. It was subtle. But in a court where angle and posture were political weapons, subtle meant seismic. The palace had not quieted since the unveiling. It had intensified. Scholars debated Terran musculature like it was a newly discovered element. Courtiers adjusted their own stances in mirrors. I passed a pair of young nobles practicing what looked suspiciously like leaning casually against a pillar while maintaining steady eye contact. One of them whispered, "Relax the shoulders. It must appear unforced." The other responded, "I am relaxed. You look like you are preparing to lunge." "I am not lunging." I kept walking, biting back a smile. The matriarch had assigned me quarters within the inner palace wing, closer to her chambers than diplomatic protocol technically recommended. No one commented openly. They didn't have to. The first official request session took place in a chamber smaller than the unveiling plaza but no less intense. Representatives from 3 civilizations sat in a semicircle while the matriarch occupied the central throne-like structure that wasn't technically a throne but absolutely functioned as one. I stood at her right. The Thalary speaker inclined her head. "We seek a human emotion statue. Our species communicates primarily through tonal frequency. We lack visible micro-expressions. Your kind displays them constantly. That's because we can't hide them," I muttered. The matriarch's fingers brushed mine briefly, warning or reassurance. I wasn't sure which. The Virex Dominion representative followed. Our warriors train from birth. Yet the Terran exemplar stands with readiness absent tension. We request a human warrior monument to analyze this contradiction. Contradiction. They kept calling it that. As if being calm and dangerous at the same time broke some universal equation. Then came the Cerealian envoy. She was taller than the others, draped in translucent fabrics that shimmered when she shifted. We request, she said smoothly, a human lover monument. Purely ceremonial. To examine bonding symbology. Purely ceremonial. The matriarch's expression did not change, but the air pressure in the room did. And what precisely? She asked evenly. Would your monument depict? Mutual regard. Chosen proximity. Sustained gaze. I coughed. That's a lot of studying. The Cerealian envoy's luminous eyes flicked toward me. Your species does not study what it desires. That depends how dangerous it looks. A faint ripple of amusement traveled through the chamber. The matriarch did not laugh. She didn't need to. Her posture alone reasserted control. The Terran exemplar is not an object of dissection, she said. He is a participant. There it was again. Not model. Not specimen. Participant. The negotiations extended for hours. Terms were discussed. Access negotiated. Cultural limits defined. Through it all, I remained still, not stiff, just present. I realized something halfway through the Virex delegate's third speech. They were studying me in real time. Not my measurements. My reactions. My restraint. My choices. After the council dismissed, the matriarch dismissed everyone else as well. The chamber doors sealed. Silence expanded. You are adapting, she said quietly. I usually do. You stand differently now. That's what happens when entire civilizations analyze your posture. She stepped down from her elevated seat and approached slowly, no audience to impress. You understand what is occurring? Yeah, I said. I've become a symbol. You have become a standard. That landed heavier. For strength? For balance. She circled me once, not evaluating, observing. Our warriors display aggression openly. Our scholars detach emotionally. Our leaders rule through distance. Her gaze returned to mine. You do none of these things. And yet you are not weak. I never said I was. Her lips curved faintly. No. You did not. She stopped directly in front of me, closer than court etiquette allowed. Close enough that I could see faint patterns of light pulsing beneath her skin again. You asked earlier if this was dangerous, she said. And you said only if mishandled. Yes. A pause. You are influencing posture, training doctrines, even aesthetic standards. Some celebrate it. Others fear it. Do you? She considered that. I fear imbalance, she admitted. Not you. That was the first honest vulnerability she had offered without layers of ceremony. You defended me publicly, I said. I defended what you represent. And what do I represent? Her gaze softened, not weakened, softened. Choice. The word hung between us again, heavier this time. Our species bonds through obligation, she continued. Through lineage agreements. Through strategic pairing. Her voice lowered. You bond through decision. That's not always pretty. It is powerful. Silence stretched, but not uncomfortably. You studied us, I said finally. Before the commission? Yes. For how long? Several of your years. I let that settle. So this wasn't random. No. The admission didn't shock me. It clarified something that had been building since the first modeling session. You picked me. Yes. Why? She stepped even closer now, close enough that the space between us felt intentional rather than accidental. You embody equilibrium, she said quietly. You carry strength without cruelty. Confidence without ritual dominance. Humor without disrespect. A faint glow shimmered beneath her skin. And restraint. I swallowed. That's a lot of pressure. It is observation. And if I disappoint the observation? Her hand lifted, not to command, not to adjust posture, just to rest lightly against my chest. The contact was deliberate. You have not, she said. The resonance hum that had accompanied the sculpture sessions wasn't present, but something similar existed here, quieter, personal. Outside the chamber, the palace buzzed with preparations for the next commission. I could already imagine the headlines across interstellar networks. Terran archetype expands. Human emotional matrix under study. Exemplar to represent warrior doctrine. It would only grow. You realize, I said slowly, that once we do this, emotion, warrior, lover, there's no going back. I am aware. You'll tie your legacy to mine. She did not hesitate. It already is. That hit harder than any political declaration. I searched her expression for calculation. I found none. Tell me something honestly, I said. Very well. If the resonance hadn't spiked, if the sculpture hadn't reacted, would you still have chosen me for the next monuments? She held my gaze steadily. Yes. No hesitation. No strategic phrasing. Just yes. The admission shifted something inside me. This wasn't spectacle anymore. It wasn't novelty. It wasn't even diplomacy. It was intention. You were chosen very carefully, she said softly. Not as a warning. Not as manipulation. As truth. And for the first time since the summons arrived in that reactor bay, I realized the gravity of what that meant. I hadn't stumbled into this. I had been selected to change it. The announcement of the final commission spread faster than the unveiling ever had. The Human Lover Monument. Even phrased as ceremonial unity, it carried weight that neither the warrior nor emotion sculptures had. Emotion could be studied. Warrior could be admired. Lover implied something harder to contain. Choice. The palace transformed in preparation. Not into spectacle this time, but into something quieter. The sculptors requested fewer resonance prisms and more direct observation. Authenticity must not be amplified artificially, they insisted. It must be witnessed. That sounded suspiciously like pressure. I found her on the high balcony overlooking the capital's inner gardens the night before the first modeling session. The twin stars had dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky saturated in deep indigo streaked with unfamiliar constellations. The city lights below shimmered like fallen galaxies. You're avoiding the sculptors, she said without turning. They keep using the word intimate like it's a structural measurement. A soft hum of amusement vibrated through her. For them it is. I stepped beside her, leaning lightly against the railing. Months ago, that posture had been accidental influence. Now it was deliberate. I didn't lean away from her presence. I didn't overcompensate. I simply stood. The council is divided, she continued. Some believe this monument solidifies alliance. Others believe it personalizes power too greatly. Meaning they think you're too attached. She turned then, facing me fully. No crown. No court fabrications. Just her. Are they wrong? She asked. That wasn't a political question. I studied her expression. The same control she wielded before thousands was there, but thinner now. Beneath it, something unguarded flickered. Depends, I said carefully. Am I diplomacy or desire? Silence stretched between us, not tense but heavy. It began as diplomacy, she admitted. It became admiration. A pause. It has become something I did not anticipate. Her honesty landed harder than any declaration in the plaza. You could still stop it, I said. Blame cultural miscalculation. Call the Lover Monument symbolic and distance yourself. She stepped closer instead. In my tradition, the Lover Monument signifies voluntary alignment, she said quietly. Not possession. Not conquest. Alignment. And if I decline? Her expression did not fracture. You would depart with honor. The prior monuments would stand unchanged. Your species would remain respected. There it was. Freedom. Not implied. Offered. The weight of it settled into my chest. She wasn't binding me with ceremony. She was giving me an exit. I studied your history, she continued. Your wars. Your revolutions. Your flawed, persistent devotion to personal choice. Her luminous gaze held mine steadily. I will not claim you without it. I had expected passion. I had expected tension. I had not expected respect to feel this intense. You're risking more than reputation, I said. If this becomes personal, rivals won't just accuse you of imbalance. They'll act. They already consider acting, she replied calmly. For me? For what you represent. The wind shifted across the balcony, stirring the faint glow beneath her skin. I realized then that this wasn't about a monument. It wasn't even about romance as spectacle. It was about whether two very different species could redefine power without one absorbing the other. You asked me once what loyalty requires, I said. Yes. It requires choice. Her breath stilled slightly. And my choice? She asked. I reached for her hand deliberately, not because the moment demanded theatrics but because it didn't. I stay. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. Something softened across her features, not weakness, not relief. Recognition. Then the monument will reflect partnership, she said. The modeling session for the Lover Monument felt different from the first commission. No raised platform. No orbiting prisms cataloging every micro-expression. The sculptors arranged us facing one another, equal height through subtle adjustments in base structure. Proximity without dominance, the lead sculptor instructed. We stood close enough that warmth passed between us naturally. Maintain eye contact, another added. That part was easy. The resonance crystals glowed, but gently this time. No dramatic surges. No spectacle. Just steady alignment. Gesture of voluntary connection, the sculptor said. I extended my hand. She mirrored it. Our fingers hovered a breath apart. The crystals hummed, not louder, just deeper. Do not touch yet, the sculptor whispered. The space carries meaning. The space did carry meaning. It held decision. It held tension chosen rather than imposed. I felt the same steadiness that had unnerved warrior envoys and fascinated scholars. Not dominance. Not submission. Presence. Her eyes searched mine briefly, not for approval but confirmation. I didn't look away. The session concluded without applause. Without gasps. The sculptors moved quietly, reverently. Days later, the monument was unveiled, not in the grand plaza but in the central garden courtyard where both citizens and diplomats passed daily. No dissolving drapery this time. Just a gradual illumination as dawn rose behind it. Two figures stood facing each other. Equal. Balanced. Hands lifted, almost touching. The distance between them deliberate and charged. The crowd gathered slowly, absorbing the symbolism without need of proclamation. There was no exaggerated glow when she approached. Instead, when we stood before it together, the crystal light spread evenly through both forms. A scholar nearby whispered, "It does not favor one." Another replied, "It does not need to." Rival nobles watched carefully. Some calculating. Some contemplative. But none could deny the clarity of the message. This was not conquest. It was union without surrender. Humanity was no longer curiosity. No longer exotic template. Equal. As the crowd dispersed, she and I remained in the courtyard under soft morning light. "Does your species always change the civilizations it touches?" she asked quietly. "Only the ones worth keeping," I replied. Her hand found mine again, not for ceremony. Not for observation. Just because she wanted to. The monuments would continue drawing envies. The warrior sculpture would influence training doctrines. The emotion statue would be studied in academic circles across systems. The lover monument would be debated in political chambers. And somewhere across the stars, other leaders would consider whether strength could exist without domination. But in that moment, standing before crystal representations of choice made visible, none of that felt overwhelming. It felt intentional. You were chosen very carefully, she reminded me softly. I squeezed her hand lightly. Good, I said. I would have hated to think this was an accident. Above us, the twin stars rose higher, casting equal light across both statues, and across us.